Welcome, thrill seekers, to a world of spine-chilling tales and hair-raising adventures. Gather around for a frightful journey into the unknown as we delve deep into the realm of scary stories. Buckle up, hold on tight, and get ready to experience a rush of terror like never before. The old, abandoned asylum was known to be haunted. The locals avoided it like the plague, and even the bravest of them wouldn't dare to set foot inside. But for 5 college students, the asylum was the perfect place for a Halloween party. They had heard all the stories, of course. The ghosts, the mysterious disappearances, the strange sounds that echoed through the halls. But they didn't believe in any of it. They were young and foolish, and they thought they were invincible. The 5 of them arrived at the asylum just before midnight. They parked their car outside the crumbling walls and made their way inside. The air was cold and musty, and the silence was so thick that it seemed to press down on their chests. They made their way through the darkened halls, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. They explored room after room, finding nothing but dusty furniture and broken glass. But as they neared the end of the hall, they heard a faint whispering sound. It was barely audible, but it was there. They followed the sound to a door at the end of the hall. The door was old and rusted, but it wasn't locked. The students pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was empty, except for a large metal table in the center. The table was covered in chains, and there were dried bloodstains on the surface. The students were unnerved, but they tried to laugh it off. They thought it was just a prop, something the previous owners had left behind to scare off trespassers. They didn't realize that the bloodstains were real, that they were a remnant of the asylum's dark past. They decided to continue their exploration, eager to find more scary surprises. But as they moved deeper into the asylum, they began to notice strange things. The whispers grew louder, and sometimes they could hear footsteps echoing through the halls. They would find doors that were open one minute and locked the next, and they couldn't explain how it happened. They started to feel like they were being watched, like someone or something was following them. It wasn't until they reached the basement that they realized how wrong they were. The basement was cold and damp, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. They found themselves in a long, narrow hallway, with cells on either side. The cells were empty, but there was a sense of dread that hung in the air. And then they heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping sound, coming from one of the cells. The students approached the cell slowly, their flashlights trained on the door. They could hear something shuffling around inside, and the tapping sound grew louder. They opened the door, and what they saw inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The room was empty, except for a single figure. It was a woman, dressed in tattered clothes, with matted hair and sunken eyes. She was chained to the wall, and her hands were stained with blood. The woman didn't speak, but the tapping sound continued. It was coming from her feet, which were wrapped in chains that were anchored to the floor. The students were horrified. They had stumbled upon something far beyond their understanding, something that shouldn't exist in the world. They turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind them. They were trapped in the basement with the woman, with no way out. And then, the whispers started again. This time, they were louder than ever before. They could hear the woman's voice, faint and scratchy, coming from all around them. The students huddled together, their hearts pounding in their chests. They could feel the presence of something else in the room, something that was far more terrifying than the woman in chains. It was like a cold, malevolent force was closing in on them, suffocating them with its evil aura. Suddenly, the chains around the woman's feet began to rattle. The students watched in horror as the chains began to loosen, and the woman started to stand up. But she wasn't alone. As she rose to her feet, other figures began to emerge from the shadows. They were like the woman, dressed in tattered clothes and bearing the marks of brutal torture. They were the forgotten victims of the asylum, trapped in their eternal torment. The students tried to run, but they were hemmed in by the spirits of the dead. They could feel the cold breath of the ghosts on their necks, and the chill of their fingers on their skin. One by one, the students fell. They were dragged screaming into the shadows, their bodies disappearing into the darkness. Only one of them survived. She was the last to fall, the last to feel the icy grip of the ghosts. But just as she was about to succumb, she heard a voice in her ear. It was a whisper, barely audible, but it was there. The voice belonged to the historian, the man who had spent his life researching the history of the asylum. He had always been drawn to the place, even though he knew of its dark past. He had spent countless hours poring over old documents and archives, trying to uncover the secrets of the forgotten institution. And now, he was calling out to the surviving student. He had left behind a warning, a message that he hoped would save her from the curse of the asylum. The message was simple: beware the darkness that lurks in the shadows. For once it has claimed you, there is no turning back. The student stumbled out of the asylum, her mind reeling with terror. She knew that she had narrowly escaped the fate of the others, that she had been saved by the warning of the historian. But she also knew that the curse of the asylum would never truly be lifted. The ghosts would always be there, waiting in the shadows, ready to claim their next victim. And so, she left the town, never to return. But the memory of the asylum haunted her for the rest of her life, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. As the night draws to a close, we bid farewell to the terrors that haunted us and the spine-tingling tales that kept us on the edge of our seats. Remember, the darkness may linger, but the dawn always brings a new light. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop exploring the mysteries of the unknown.